Hello Moto GP fans. Welcome back to ZNGP Today. Sepang produced a surprise. After testing the GP26, Ducati appears to have opted to equip the new bike with the GP24 engine rather than the GP25 that Marc Márquez used to dominate last year. That decision, and the test pace across the Ducati family, changes the narrative going into the season. Below are that unpack what happened at Sepang and what it could mean for Ducati and the grid. Pecco Bagnaia left the Sepang tests with noticeably better spirits and a clearer plan. After a difficult 2025, the Ducati rider spent the winter reflecting and testing the new GP26, and his words in Malaysia mixed honesty, responsibility, and renewed optimism. Below, that unpack Bagnaia's Sepang verdict and what it means going into Buriram and the season. With MotoGP's 2026 aero rules tightening the window for mistakes, Marc Márquez is approaching pre-season testing less like a stopwatch exercise and more like a chess match. At Sepang, the Ducati rider explained a mental trick that helps him judge aerodynamic packages with only 2 test circuits available, and it says a lot about how seriously teams are treating this decision. Don't forget to click subscribe button and the bell icon for MotoGP news update. The most striking revelation from Sepang is technical and strategic. Ducati seems to have chosen to step back to the GP24 power plant for this year's GP26 package. That's not a minor detail. Engines define character, delivery, tractability, braking behavior, and can tilt a bike's handling envelope toward or away from certain riding styles. If Ducati really did drop the GP25 in favor of the GP24 architecture, it implies the engineers believe the older architecture gives a more consistent platform for the team to develop in 2026, especially important now that development pathways and parity among manufacturers have tightened. For a rider like Bagnaia, who struggled on the GP25, this could be the reset he needs. For Marquez, it's a question of whether the change preserves the edge he found last year. Ducati has reverted to the GP24, Bagnaia said. Sepang's timings and race simulations suddenly look a lot less one-sided than 2025. Where last year only Marquez appeared to extract the GP25's strengths consistently, this test saw multiple Ducati pilots fast. A sign that whatever spec the factory settles on is more transferable across riders. Marquez topping the timesheets and saying the GP26 corner feel resembles the GP24 is important. It suggests the bike's balance and feel have shifted toward a familiar, usable package that produces similar behavior for different riders. That's the sort of predictability a factory wants when it runs 4 full factory bikes. It lets development iterate with more reliable feedback from multiple riders. The GP26 feels like the GP24 in the corners. Quote Marquez. The consequence that has the loudest sporting resonance is Pecco Bagnaia's better feeling on the GP26, specifically under braking. Bagnaia's 2025 struggles were often tied to corner entry and instability. If the GP26, with GP24 engine characteristics, grants improved stability under braking, that directly attacks the problems that cost him consistency. It's never wise to declare a season won at tests, but engineers and riders both treat corner entry confidence as foundational. Once braking confidence returns, lap times and race rhythm are far likelier to follow. For Bagnaia, Sepang could be the turning point that moves him from anomalous year back toward genuine championship contention. The GP26 is better than the GP25 in braking at corners. Quote from Bagnaia's Sepang impression. The broader paddock picture matters too. Ducati will field 4 riders on factory equipment this season: Marc Márquez, Pecco Bagnaia, Marquez and Fabio Di Giannantonio. While satellite and test arrangements mean some riders will still run the GP25 or the GP24 depending on program needs. That multiplicity of platforms gives Ducati options. They can run parallel development threads, stability versus peak performance, and pick the path that best suits the 2027 regulations and tire evolution. It also shifts market dynamics. If the GP24-based GP26 delivers usable pace for everyone, Ducati's argument for continuity and for keeping its top riders becomes stronger. Sepang's verdict appears to be pragmatic, Ducati favoring a proven engine architecture to give the whole rider lineup a more usable, consistent machine. The immediate winners would be riders who struggled on last year's GP25, like Bagnaia, while Marquez's task will be to show the change doesn't blunt the qualities he exploited in 2025. Tests can mislead, the real confirmation comes in race conditions, but the early signal is clear. Ducati is trying to make the GP26 a platform that works for everyone, not just for a single exceptional rider. Watch how that decision plays out when the championship starts and the upgrades begin to flow. The headline from Bagnaia's Sepang debrief is simple but powerful. He feels good on the GP26. That's not just lap time talk, it's a mental and physical recalibration. Bagnaia described the GP26 as the most beautiful bike he's ridden, and he repeatedly linked that aesthetic appreciation to real on-track confidence. When a rider says a bike is beautiful, what he really means is that it responds predictably, gives tactile feedback and lets him ride with conviction, all ingredients that had been missing for him last year. In Malaysia he reported comfortable, encouraging stints, and made it clear that Sepang's smooth asphalt and familiar rhythm helped him refine a positive baseline. That baseline is crucial. Confidence breeds precision, precision unlocks performance, and performance quiets the old doubts that derailed his 2025 campaign. For me, it's also the most beautiful bike there is, but especially of all the ones I've ridden. Perhaps the most striking part of Bagnaia's interview was his candidness about last year. He didn't hide behind excuses. He acknowledged tactical and psychological errors and accepted responsibility for some of the chaos, saying, "I made a lot of mistakes by not being happy with certain results," is both humble and revealing. It shows he recognized a mindset problem, rejecting incremental progress, over-focusing on outcomes, that can snowball into a technical spiral. That level of self-scrutiny matters because it gives engineers and coaches a precise target. Help him rebuild a process-focused routine that treats good setups and small gains as wins in themselves. For a rider who lived at the top for several seasons, admitting the error is the first step toward changing habits and rebuilding consistency. At the beginning, I made a lot of mistakes by not being happy with certain results. Bagnaia's remedy is as psychological as it is physical. He outlined a personal trick, downplaying successes to stay hungry, a motivated, disciplined mindset rather than an emotional roller coaster. That approach can be double-edged. It keeps a champion pushing, but if taken to an extreme it risks never celebrating progress. Importantly, his words at Sepang suggested he's tempering that trait, reframing it into sustainable motivation rather than self-flagellation. That shift, taking pride in incremental gains while keeping the inner drive, is precisely what teams want to see. It gives the crew measurable targets, feelings at entry, braking stability, consistent sector times, and a rider who will keep pushing without falling into the panic that plagued him in 2025. I tend to downplay what I do to try and motivate myself to always do more. Bagnaia's optimism is balanced by realism. He admitted Sepang suited him, and he explicitly flagged Buriram as a tougher test for his riding style, which means the real confirmation won't be in Malaysia but in Thailand and the opening rounds. That's an important distinction. Feeling fast on a preferred circuit is encouraging, but Moto GP is about adaptability across wildly different tracks. Bagnaia's public acceptance that Buriram may expose weaknesses shows maturity. He's prepared to confront them rather than deny their existence. Expect a conservative program there. Measured runs, focus on braking and corner entry, the areas he said improved, and careful data-driven work with engineers to translate Sepang's positives into race readiness. Buriram is a more complicated track, more difficult for my riding style, so we'll see there, but overall I'm satisfied. Pecco Bagnaia's Sepang report is a tidy mix of accountability, renewed technical comfort, and mental recalibration. He's not promising miracles, he's promising process, better feel, honest analysis of mistakes, and steady motivation. If the GP26 continues to deliver the braking and stability he described, and if Bagnaia's psychological reset holds under Buriram's tougher tests, we could be watching the start of a genuine comeback rather than a one-off test flash. The paddock will be watching closely, because when Bagnaia finds rhythm, he's one of the sport's fastest turnarounds. Unlike engines, which are already frozen for most manufacturers, aerodynamics remain the biggest winter gamble. Teams get just one further in-season update, meaning the choice made before the opening round must work everywhere, from stop-start circuits to high-speed flow tracks. Marquez was blunt: the limitation isn't ideal, but it's reality. That reality forces riders and engineers into risk management mode, prioritizing versatility over peak performance. Ducati, already dominant, cannot afford to lock in an aero concept that shines only on certain layouts. Marquez's words underline the seriousness of the decision. This isn't about winning a test, it's about surviving a 22-race season without regrets. No. But there's no choice. So you need to be careful. With only Sepang and Buriram available, Marquez explained how he mentally transforms the Malaysian circuit into others on the calendar. Rather than riding each lap as Sepang specific, he uses imagination to stress test the bike's aerodynamics. Fast corners become Qatar, heavy braking zones evoke Jerez, long straights hint at tracks where drag matters most. This kind of cognitive overlay is something only highly experienced riders can do effectively, and Marquez has spent over a decade memorizing how bikes behave across wildly different layouts. It's a reminder that modern Moto GP testing is as much psychological simulation as physical experimentation. At this racetrack, you have a lot of different types of corners, so you need to imagine you are at other circuits. Marquez's focus wasn't on lap time glory but on future-proofing. He openly framed aero evaluation as a long-term vision exercise, not just whether a wing works today, but whether it will behave consistently across an entire season. That mindset aligns perfectly with Ducati's philosophy: build a bike that is never weak, even if it's not always spectacular. The champion's comments suggest Ducati is evaluating stability, tire life, and predictability over raw downforce. In short, they're designing for championships, not headlines. In different parts of the track, you can imagine the corners are more or less like Qatar or like Jerez. By the end of Sepang, Marquez appeared to lean toward keeping elements of the 2025 aero package, a telling sign that Ducati's previous concept still has life in it. But crucially, he stopped short of confirming anything. Buriram will be decisive. Thailand's layout, heat and braking demands will expose weaknesses that Sepang might hide. Only after that test will Ducati lock in its homologation, a choice that cannot be undone. Marquez's patience here is strategic. Better to wait than to commit too early and pay for it months later. Still, I need to understand in Thailand. Marc Márquez's aero philosophy is clear: test with your head as much as your hands. In a season where one decision could define everything, Ducati's champion is mentally racing Qatar, Jerez and beyond, all while circulating Sepang. The stopwatch matters, but vision matters more. And in MotoGP's new aero era, imagination may be as valuable as horsepower. Thanks for watching ZNGP Today, and this is your MotoGP news update. And see you next time!